Rainbow Reflections, Book 1, A Kind of Magic. Chapter 10, In Only 7 Days. The remainder of the first school week went by without any other issues. Ren and Zin had to ask their father what the mirror shard was about, knowing that he was hiding something from them. Yet he wouldn't say, even after Zin poked and prodded him with a stick, so the twins therefore focused on their homework. Free Day was just as long as Moon Day, but instead of being full of magic or martial arts, it was entirely focused on art. The first class, drawing and painting, was taught by Hyaktu. The students learned the fundamentals of sketching different shapes and a bit with perspective. Ren and Zin, who often drew pictures growing up, sketched entire scenes while conversing by mind instead of following Hyaktu's lecture. The next class was cooking, which Sorella joined them for. This was the only class that was taught by the cooks. It was also the only time students were allowed in the kitchen. The fall semester would be focused on cooking, while the second semester would go into baking. The older students were allowed to use magic as they worked, but the first years weren't. The three friends worked as a team, making bean patties served with potato sticks. Since the students finished early, they got to eat the food they made as a morning snack. The first years weren't allowed to serve any food they made until their second year, if they kept the class, once they had their food handler certificate after the first year. Even so, the food wasn't always served, especially if a mistake was made. Writing was next, and Ren and Zin went to the art studio alone to see that their father was teaching again. It was a session about grammar, providing them with a foundation. Their homework was to edit a student paper. The class would go into writing stories and poetry later in the semester, once the basics of writing were covered. Sorella joined them again for the fourth class, fashion. Aster taught this class, and he tried lecturing about different clothing styles, particularly robes. He eventually gave up when he saw that nobody was paying attention. He therefore allowed the students to choose color combinations for clothing, while he went to try on different robes from the theater costumes and show them off to the few interested students. After lunch, they went to the music studio for choir. The music studio was full of instruments, including 2 pianos, but the students remained in the front of the class, away from the instruments. Hyaktu was teaching both the choir and band classes. Most of the students who were enrolled in choir were also doing band, which meant an easy shift from vocal warm-ups to instrumental warm-ups. Ren and Zin then went to the theater for their final class that day, once more taught by Aster, who had more command in theater than the laid-back fashion class. The theater was on the small side, with rows of seats in front of a stage. There was a back room behind the stage, which contained the costumes and props. The students learned a few warm-up exercises for acting, how to read a script, and chose roles for the play they'd be putting on at the end of the semester. Though the class was 2 hours, it would be fast-paced, as they only had a few weeks to get an entire play produced. "Ooh, tomorrow's the club day, right?" Zin asked Ren as they stood in line for dinner that night, exhausted after a full day of classes. Ren nodded eagerly. "Yep, we get to join as many clubs as we want." "Do you think we can join that boat driving club, so we can get our driving certifications?" Ren bit her bottom lip. She switched to speaking telepathically instead of aloud. "Zin, I don't think that's a good idea. If you still don't have your magic, you won't be able to learn. And I can't just do the magic for you. Driving a boat takes a lot of skill, and I doubt I've got that kind of skill right now. Plus, if you can't do it, well, you're not actually learning it, now are you?" "Yeah, you're right," Zin replied, sounding disappointed. "Well, there's always next year. Besides, there's probably going to be so many other interesting clubs anyway." She was right. The next day, there were tables strewn around the courtyard. Students from the upper years had set up tables with banners hanging off them, telling the others what their club was. Each table held a sign-up clipboard for students interested in joining the club. Ren and Zin darted around the courtyard, leaving Sorella behind as they explored the tables. There were clubs related to academics, like studying spirits or getting help with channeling stronger magic. Other clubs were made for fun and hanging out, like the game club and art club. "Which club should we join?" Zin asked, looking down at the mirror after they'd run around the entire courtyard, jotting down the names of the clubs they were interested in. "I definitely want to do that game club." "But it's on free day at 2, Ren said, looking over Zin's shoulder to see the mirror. "We've got class." "Oh," Zin moaned, "but I want to do it." "Maybe next year?" Ren suggested. Fine, Zin muttered. How's about that one about construction? It sounds interesting, Ren said, scrolling through the notes. And it's on Triz Day at 10, so we can make it. I'm not interested in it, Zin grunted. But you always made little towns for your toys when we were kids, Ren pointed out. Yeah, not interested in it, Zin repeated. Ren snorted in amusement. They continued through the list, debating which clubs to join, only looking up as Sorella approached. Have you joined any clubs, Sorella? Ren asked the other girl. Sorella shook her head once. Clubs aren't my thing, she muttered. Ren frowned. Of course that would be Sorella's response. Why did she expect anything else? Well, was there anything you were interested in? She pressed. No, Sorella said blandly. Well, there was a weapon club. Weapon club? Why don't you join it, Sorella? Sorella shook her head. You have to be a blue sash in Kung Fu or Tai Chi to join. We're obviously far from it. Too bad, though. Weapons are really interesting. Oh. Ren tapped her chin thoughtfully. Do you have any hobbies? Like, before you came here? Ren hoped she wasn't prying too much. The few times she tried to ask about Sorella's past, the girl would become very tight-lipped and even ignore her for the rest of the day. Ren had learned to stop asking questions. Sorella stared at her for a long moment, then said simply, My hobby was surviving. Ren could have slapped her hand against her forehead. She didn't know what else to say, and so remained quiet. A moment of awkward silence lasted, until Zin broke it. It appeared she had not been paying any attention to the conversation. Let's do the art club, she said, pointing to the bottom of the list. It meets on Saturday. Let's go to that table to get more information. Okay, Ren agreed, and she hurried after Zin once more, glad to get away from Sorella. They soon reached a table labeled Art Club on a green banner. The sisters slid to a stop just before they could slam into the table. A chunky student sat behind it, looking a bit bored as they played with their curly green hair. When Ren and Zin came over, though, they perked up and smiled. What's this club about? Zin asked before Ren could finish saying hello. The person smiled at Zin's enthusiasm. We do arts, lots and lots of arts, they said in a high voice. Yeah, I got that much, Zin said blandly. But what kinds of art? Whatever art we want, the person said promptly. No lectures or assignments, just whatever we want to do. We do collaborations and sometimes choose monthly themes too. Ooh, I'm in, Zin said, and she signed up at once. Ren snorted in amusement and wrote her name on the clipboard too. She and Zin were the only two on the list so far. The person looked at their names and glanced up at them in surprise. Wait, you're Mr. Saihan's kids? That's right, Ren said brightly, and she stuck out her hand. I'm Ren Saihan. The person took her hand and shook it quickly. I'm Mint Kahika. I'm Zin, Zin said bluntly. It's very nice to meet you, Mint said.
You're holding up the line,
said a sudden loud voice behind Ren. She turned around to see C3 had arrived. There was no line behind her, but she was clearly in his way of the sign-up clipboard. Sorry, she said, smiling at him. Scowling at her, he added his name to the list. He then grabbed a small pamphlet from the table and walked away. Okay, Mint mumbled, the green eyes wide with panic. That was a bit, He's pretty rude, Zin told them. Well, hopefully he just woke up on the wrong side of the bed today, Mint murmured uneasily. So how long have you been in the club? Ren queried curiously. Since last year, my first year. I got to take over the club since all the other students who made it left. I'm so excited! We're gonna have all kinds of fun making art! Yee! Zin yowled. Ren chuckled. I hope so. Let me just talk to Zin for a quick moment. She grabbed her sister and pulled her away from the table. Once she was sure they were out of Mint's earshot, Ren muttered, Are you sure you want to sign up for this? Why not? Zin replied. We're already doing a full day of art on free day, and we do art in our free time, Ren pointed out. It's not exactly trying out new things, is it? Zin frowned. I guess not, but the other clubs sound boring, or they meet at times when we're in class. Besides, now we can share our art with other people. But we do too much art, don't you think? You can never do too much art. Besides, we've never had any art friends before, Zin said. Ren tapped her pointed chin. We've never had friends before in general, huh? Unless you count the teachers. Well, I guess we can do it. Mint does seem pretty fun, and the club is so small, I wouldn't want to disappoint them by taking our names off the list. Yeah, so let's do it. Ren smiled. Okay, fine. Hey, do you think Sarala would be interested in joining? You ask, Zin said with a shrug. Ren nodded and turned on the balls of her feet, skipping across the stone ground until she found Sarala. Sarala was now standing by the large pond, staring down at its rippling surface. She had her back to her, so Ren slowed to a walk and tiptoed the rest of the way. Once she was right behind Sarala, she launched herself forward with a loud cry. Sarala whirled around and threw a punch at Ren. Ren moved out of the way just in time, glad she had quick reflexes. But she had felt the wind on the strike, and it felt close. What was that for? Sarala snarled. Sorry, Ren squeaked, her heart racing. It was... Sneak up on me again, and you're dead, Sarala growled in a low voice. It won't happen again, Ren promised, her body stiff and a lump forming in her throat. Sarala continued to glare at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Ren watched her go in a daze. After a moment, she sighed and made her way back to Zin, who was chatting to Mint about the Saihan family's most recent vacation to Wada Wada Huha, a small island part of the Kuakoa Islands where Mint was from. Ren looked down at the clipboard, which only contained 3 names. She flicked her gaze up to Mint and asked, Is this club generally small? Mint turned to her, while Zin made a face at her for interrupting the story. Yes, Mint said. Last year we had 5 members. So do you think Zin, C3, and I will be the only other members? Ren pressed. Probably, Mint said with a shrug. Nobody wants to do an art club if they're already in art classes after all. Ren did her best not to exchange a guilty glance with Zin. She merely nodded and added Sarala's name to the clipboard. Well, now we'll have 5 members in the club, she said. Did Sarala say she wanted to join? Zin asked skeptically. No, Ren replied with a shrug. But I'll see if I can get her to come, at least to the first meeting. That's next Saturday, right after breakfast, Mint told them. She can always leave the club if she wants no part in it, Ren pointed out. But she should try out something, you know? I guess, Zin muttered. I just don't think she'll be too happy. She'll be happier than when I scared her right now. That's a for sure getter, Ren said. You scared her? Yep. Zin stared at Ren. How are you still alive? Ren laughed. Quick reflexes? Is this Sarala person a downer? Mint asked, frowning. She's had a rough past, Ren explained. But she needs to learn to open up more and have fun. I'll be a tree before that happens, Zin scoffed. As Ren and Zin headed back to the tower, Ren couldn't blame her sister for doubting her. Sarala would take ages to open up, if she ever did. Maybe I can try talking to her later, once she's cooled off, Ren thought, humming lightly to herself as they entered the tower. That sounds like a good plan. I just can't be too blunt about it, otherwise she'll get scared off or offended. She skipped up the spiral steps to the bathroom, trying to figure out what she was going to say to Sarala on the way. As Ren entered the bathroom, Zin continued to the next floor, likely headed for her room to read or draw. Ren closed the door behind her, the metal lights turning on as they detected her movement. She walked over to the sink, inspecting her messy-haired reflection in the mirror with a chuckle as she washed her hands. Well, that's 1 week of school done, she murmured to herself, and it feels great. She walked over to the nearby window, which looked out on tall pines and dancing trees. Opening the glass to let in some fresh air, she took a deep breath and released it in a satisfied sigh. Ooh, what's that? Movement caught her eye, and she looked down at the shrubs. A small farm cat was walking through the grass, bushy tail held high. Wren smiled at the sight. So cute! She squealed in a high-pitched voice, unable to help herself. The cat stopped walking and glanced up at her curiously, before scampering into the bushes before she could get a closer look. You're cute! Wren called out, laughing lightly. Speaking of cute, I better get to watering my cute little plants.